and welcome back to my corner, which isn't really a corner, but you don't know that. Today is all about Live Forever by Amy Talkington. Live Forever is another ghost story, which, sensing a pattern here, a theme maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Actually, not a lot of the books I'm reading right now are ghost stories. I just happen to read basically two in a row. Anyways, so Live Forever is very similar to The 10th Girl in that it involves a ghost, which technically the 10th Girl did not have any ghosts, a boarding school, which 10th Girl did have, and ritual sacrifice, which the 10th Girl had, but wasn't actually an important part of the plot, so Live Forever is honestly nothing like The 10th Girl. Meh. Live Forever is about a young girl named Olivia Bloom, who is the newest scholarship student at the illustrious Wickham Hall, where she meets the most popular boy in school, Malcolm, and then she ends up dying. I mean, like, real quick. And so the rest of the book is about her, I guess, solving the mystery about who killed her, and why so many girls at this school have been murdered. I'm trying to decide if I want to get into spoilers right away or not. First, let me give you my opinion. Some of my opinion is influenced based on the fact that I listened to it on audiobook, because for all my Rugrats aficionados out there, the narrator is the voice of Phil and Lil. And it, for the most part, it was okay. But every now and again, you could hear the Phil and Lil, and it just, it made Liv feel very juvenile. And that bothers me. And I don't know if I would have read it that way in my own head, but she annoyed me because of the way she was read. I did read quite a few reviews of people saying that they thought Talkington tried to make her too deep, because she's an artist, and I guess all artists have to be deep. I was on the lookout for that, and I didn't get the sense. I did get the sense that Talkington knows her art and overdid it. Like, there's no sensing about that, actually. That's a straight up fact. I think it would have been cool in the beginning just to establish the fact that Liv gets it. Like, she's an artist and she knows her art. And, then sprinkle things in here and there just to remind us. But it was overwhelming. Like, almost every comparison Liv made had to do with a work of art. I like art, I really do, but I don't need to be reminded of the fact that that's her life. Did I think that Talkington tried too hard to make Liv into something she wasn't? I don't think so. She did go overboard in certain areas. My biggest issue, which Talkington is not the only writer who is guilty of this, and she will not be the last author to be guilty of this, but it is the insta-love. Liv, by virtue of being a scholarship student, is looked down upon. And so the story opens with her arriving at this boarding school, and she, by no fault of her own, is late. But she's judged by, like, everybody she meets for coming late. So anyways, so she joins the tour late, and at some point they're told about, people believe that Wickham Hall is haunted, and then spooky things start to happen, and then all of a sudden the lights turn on in the auditorium. Like, it was all just one big joke, one big production into scaring the new students. Liv is basically judging everybody she sees, saying, well, they all look the same, except for that guy. Who's Malcolm, naturally. and they meet eyes and whoo sizzles or whatever. Anyways, so I don't know how many, could have been the next day, could have been that evening. I don't remember. And they have this big, I guess, back to school banquet. And of course, she's underdressed because nobody gave the scholarship girl the memo. And, you know, she meets her kindred spirit, Gabe, who is also underdressed and also scholarship, although his is by choice because this is not his first year. So, you know, they're sitting down and all of a sudden, you know, it's obvious that something's about to happen, and Gabe informs her that it's this pretentious back to school first dance where I forget why he's chosen, but you know, this one specific person goes and picks a girl to dance with to kind of open up the school year, and of course it's Malcolm, and of course he chooses Liv. So let's see. I mean, when I say she dies early, but not before she falls in love with Malcolm. You know, there's all these rules about boy-girl interactions, so they only manage, I guess, one real date. Granted, it's a day-long date because it's kind of like a teacher work day. And they are in love. And I just can't. Like, I just can't. I mean, I understand teenagers fall in love quickly. They think they're in love. Whether it turns out to really be love or not is not for me to say. But in this book, she's known him, I think, a grand total of 2 weeks. And they went on one long date. And they're both in love? I mean, like, they can't even just say, I'm in really deep like, or say lust. You know, she dies, and kind of her whole motivation is Malcolm. I mean, yes, there are other things that she's trying to accomplish, but her entire motivation is letting him know she's there, and she loves him, and the same thing for him, because he had told her he loved her, like, 10 minutes before she died. And so she's like, he doesn't know that I love him back. And she has this whole deep-seated issue with love because she's been in the foster care system. And so she has never really felt love. And so the fact that she loves him is a big deal. And then, you know, she, in the end, when all the other ghosts leave, she's like, well, I've got to stay for Malcolm. I'm like, girl, I mean, okay, I guess, so the thing with the ghosts is that every year on their, like, the moment of their death, you know, they're able to basically become corporeal, and other people can see them, they can interact with them, and so I guess within the year following, she truly could have fallen in love with Malcolm. But she's a ghost, folks. Nothing's gonna happen. That was my major issue, was the insta love. Like, and it's not even, I can take it in like a fantasy book maybe, or I don't know. I was gonna say maybe something like Hunger Games, where it's sort of reality but not reality, but there's a reason, there's a need for the characters to be in love, but I don't know. I don't know if I quite buy that. I buy lust. I buy instant like, because I was a teenage girl once. I mean, even now that I'm not a teenage girl, you know, I can still feel very strongly towards someone initially. Am I in love? No. But yeah, so I think that really, especially because it was such a major, not plot point, but it just really flavored the novel, that I was like, I'm done with this. Gabe, who I don't quite buy the reasoning behind why he can see ghosts. Talkington says it's because his brother died, and he wished so hard to be able to see his brother again that he basically forced himself into being able to see ghosts. So he is kind of her conduit to the rest of the world. So a lot of people, because of all the time they spent together, thought she should have fallen in love with Gabe. I mean, I never got much from him. I mean, I thought he was a nice guy. I thought he had substance. Not that Malcolm was that one-dimensional. So it's not that I could say Gabe had more going for him than Malcolm, because, you know, Malcolm didn't end up being the typical rich boy, whatever. But sometimes I feel like people want the contrary just because it's contrary. Just because Malcolm is supposed to be rich and snobby does not mean that he's not a worthwhile love interest. Let's see, I did agree with most, well, all reviewers who said that they wanted more about the ghosts. So the deal is, and spoiler alert, if you don't want a spoiler, time to go. Alright, so the thing is, the school was predicated upon the notion that people should be able to learn how they want to learn, to appreciate nature, to kind of escape expectations, societal expectations. Because the founders, he had been wealthy, she had been not. They fell in love, you know, it wasn't acceptable, so they leave England, come to America, establish a school. Eventually they have a son, Elijah, who then, when he's older, goes back to England for various reasons, and he meets his wealthy family. And that turns him against his mother because he feels she robbed him of what he deserved, the upbringing he deserved to have. And while he's there, he also is studying, like, Gaelic traditions and kind of, not devil worship necessarily, but in the same vein. So he comes back to this school and he's like, I want this school to be successful. I come from successful people and I don't really care my parents' reasonings. It is not what I think it's not achieving what it should be achieving. So using these Gaelic traditions that he has learned, he kills his mother and he uses her soul as a way to kind of bind the school with success. And then he establishes the victors, and every 10 years they kill someone, use this spell, the enchantment, the magic words, whatever you want to call them, to bind the spirit of this girl to the school, and ergo, anybody who has attended this school would achieve success, which means the school will be highly touted, because every student who comes to this school gives blood, and then the blood is then tied into the school, and you see where we're going with this. So, Liv comes, she dies, and now she's like, well, who killed me? Is it the nasty girl who led my school tour, who's also in love with Malcolm, or was it Malcolm? Was he pretending? Which she actually never believes it was Malcolm. She believes that he was good, which I think if Talkington had made that less clear, like if we'd had more doubt, it would have given more depth to the story, because it's a great push and pull between we want them to be made for each other, but what if he was pretending? Anyways, so this was her year to die, to be the sacrifice, which, I don't know, I guess it's been 100 years of the school, and so that means there's at least 10 ghosts. And they're all scattered around campus, and Gabe has seen and or interacted with some of these ghosts. He can't see them all the time. Like, he's really only able to see them where death has been, so if he stumbles across where they died, he can see them, or in a graveyard, he can see them. He can always hear them, though. She then is like, she didn't really know she died. And then strange things happen, like she can't go inside, she can't touch things, and she's like, I think I died. She goes and she finds Gabe, and she tries to convince him that Malcolm is good, and they need Malcolm because Malcolm has ties to the school. His father has influence, but Gabe's like, but he's a victor. Anyways, she finally convinces Gabe to get Malcolm involved, and they finally convince Malcolm that she is actually there, and they go about, and interspersed are stories from how some of the other girls died. That, in my opinion, is the strongest point of the book. It's not like I hated Liv, and I'm saying if you go on Goodreads in particular, because you get gobs of reviews from a book on Goodreads, they hated Liv. She was annoying, although, as I said, some of that was because of the narrator. But she definitely, in my opinion, was not as interesting and as deep as she could have been. I thought these other girls were much more interesting, but they only all got their one story of how they died. Like, there was no continuation of who they were or what they've been doing since they died. And there's really, even though I didn't count how many stories there were, I was listening on audiobook, it's not like I can just flip back. I want to say 5 or 6 accounts, but they really only focused on 2 of the ghosts outside of Liv, because the mother who'd been killed in the beginning, or who was that initial sacrifice, had spent her afterlife keeping all the ghosts apart, because she still believed in the school, and she felt like if the ghosts all came together, then it would ruin the school. Like, if they brought down the school, then the school would not accomplish what it should. Also, she, purgatory, hell, I don't really know what was being referred to, but she had seen a glimpse of whatever came next, and she was afraid of that, and she didn't want the girls to, I guess, go through that. She thought they were better where they were. Anyways, so yeah, it's not like all these ghosts have been having tea parties in the last 100 years, but I will say those were really interesting stories. So it turns out that, spoiler, the murderer was the mean girl's brother, because he was the president of the Victors. And not only is Malcolm a Victor, he's not involved in anything nefarious, but his dad was, and it's only the president that kills. His dad had been president a year, so he killed a girl. His great-great-grandfather, I think, had been the next one to kill. He had done the second kill overall. So he did have these ties, but I guess he escaped that part of the gene pool. Like, he missed out on the crazy. He just got the insta-love. So, yeah, Live Forever, thankfully, was a short book. I think that also saved it. That I didn't have to endure too much for too long. But I did zone out. Yeah, probably every 5 minutes. I was like, I think I missed something. Yeah, so the story, I think the premise was much better than the execution. The writing, apparently Talkington has like a screenwriting background. I wouldn't say that I thought that it was detrimental to her writing. I've definitely read much worse, but I think it also did keep it a bit more surface level. Yeah, and maybe it attributed to too much description, or, maybe too much dialogue. I think this one, as I mentioned, just missed the mark on really making a good premise into a great book. It's one of those that I would recommend. I would not reread it. I don't know if I would read anything else by this writer, just because her writing did not impress me so much that I would give her a second chance. Recommending it, I would recommend it to a certain age group. If you're a mature reader, don't bother. If you're someone who really wants a good ghost story, don't bother. If you're someone who's like, I want to write a ghost story and I want to see how somebody included multiple ghosts, go for it. Or if you want to say, how do I not do this? You could learn some pointers from Live Forever. Honestly, this one, there's just not much to talk about. There's not much to analyze. It had a lot of potential, but I could put it down. So that's all there is to say about that, right? So I will see you next time, hopefully with a better review.